everybody, welcome back to Winnemac Hockey, where today we are continuing our off-season analysis series, and we're going to talk about the Vancouver Canucks and reflect on what they've done so far this off-season and what we think they could potentially do to continue to improve their team for next season. I am Dom DeBomb Heater, joined by my amazing co-hosts in Jake the Snake Armstrong and Matt the Brat Cleveland. If you enjoy NHL discussion and analysis and street hockey content, you're in the right place, and please consider hitting that subscribe button. Let's get into the video. Alright, so the Vancouver Canucks have made quite a few off-season moves, but maybe some that the fans have loved, and maybe some that they've hated, especially since Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes have not been re-signed yet. So last season, Vancouver finished with a subpar record of 23, 29, and 4, and they've got $14 million in cap space as of right now. So, Jake, let's come over to you. Let's talk about some of the highlights of the offseason with some of the acquisitions that the Vancouver Canucks have made, and then we'll discuss some of the losses, the cap situation, and obviously the Petey and Quinn Hughes situation. So go ahead.
All right, so as a cumulative gain this offseason, they have brought in Jason Dickinson, who still has not received a new contract. He's going to arbitration. Connor Garland, who they re-signed for several more years. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, a 2022 third-round pick, Yaroslav Halak, Tucker Pullman, and Luke Shen.
All right, so with that being said, who has Vancouver lost in the offseason?
All right, so their total losses, starting with that expansion draft loss, Cole Lind, in addition to 2021 third-round pick, Jake Virtanen, Braden Holtby, a 9th overall pick this year, Jay Beagle, Louis Eriksson, a 2022 second-rounder, a 2023 seventh-rounder, and Nate Schmidt.
All right, so it looks like they've paid a hefty price in those that they have lost compared to those that they have acquired. So, Matt, I want to come over to you, and I'm curious to know, who do you think is an acquisition that you think is going to make a great impact for this team, and you're over here like, yes, that was a great move, Vancouver. Who's your guy?
Well, I'd like to say probably the biggest one of the offseason, and Oliver Ekman-Larsson. I think he's a dude who, the last couple of years, his value is definitely depreciated with the amount of money he's been paid and the type of production he's been giving Arizona. But I think he's a guy who was ready for a bounce-back season, and he was ready for a new location. He got that here in Vancouver, and I'm excited to see what he can do. I'm hoping he's going to have more guys in the back end with him to play with, but he's going to be a guy who's going to be back there. He's going to be able to play a big part on that defense.
Jake, so same question to you here. Who do you think that is going to make a huge impact for Vancouver with some of the acquisitions that they've made?
Well, I would agree. Connor Garland is a huge acquisition. He was great in Arizona. I think he's going to be even better in Vancouver. But somebody who might go under the radar that was a huge pickup for them is Yaroslav Halak, coming in for 1 year at $1.5 million annual average value. They bought out Holtby to try to save some money because they have some free agents to bring back. But Halak for $1.5 million is a dependable backup. I think he can give some experience and some leadership to Thatcher Demko. Just great signing, great player. I'm sure he's a great locker room guy. He's just a solid goaltender.
So with that, who do you guys think Vancouver's going to miss next season? Because it seemed like the list of losses was longer than their acquisitions. Jake, let's come back to you. Who do you think they're really going to miss next season that you would have liked to see them bring back?
With that Halak addition, I think losing Holtby is also going to be a loss because Holtby's a great goaltender. He hadn't quite found his feet in Vancouver. Another guy who I think we could say the same thing for is Nate Schmidt. He was fantastic for Vegas in their first couple of years, especially their cup run in 2018. He was great for them. They seemed to move on from him when he was still high in value. And then in Vancouver, he didn't have a great season. So Vancouver decided to move on. But I think he's a player who they're going to miss.
Do you think that he was worth the third-round pick they got for him in that trade?
Oh, for sure. Nate Schmidt, I think if he gets back to the right team and the right system, he's going to be a top pairing defender.
Nice. Matt, so who do you think Vancouver's going to miss next season and you wish that they would have brought back?
Well, I agree a lot with what Jake said. I think those are the two big ones, the two ones that you got to think of that guys really didn't fit well with Vancouver, but they were still really good players who gave them some value. I'd like to add another guy that was in the Ekman Larson and Connor Garland trade, a guy in Anton Roussel. He was a guy who was getting paid a decent bit, but I think he was a guy who gave them good defensive value there in their forward lines. And out of all the three that they got rid of in Jay Beagle, Louis Erickson, and Anton Roussel, he's the guy who I think they're going to miss the most with the type of value that he brought in versus the contract that he was given. So that's my guy.
All right. Hey, nice thoughts, guys. So let's jump into the situation that all the Vancouver Canucks fans are probably really upset with right now, and the fact that their two top guys in Pettersson and Quinn Hughes are still not signed. So that's concerning if you're a Vancouver Canucks fan, and for all of us around the league, because we're wondering what in the world's going to happen, what kind of money are they going to get. So Vancouver, you guys were a playoff team a couple years ago and really have not lived up to the expectations this season, and now things are looking even worse with these two guys not being signed, and you have $14 million to work with. So Jake, I have to ask the question, is that enough to bring these two guys back to Vancouver?
All right, so I think we have to keep in mind it's not just these two guys that have to fit in 14 mil. They've also got Jason Dickinson, who's going to arbitration, and typically the arbitrator does not side with the team, they side with the player. So that could be, it's not going to be a lot of money, but it's enough that it's going to make a dent in that 14 mil for Jason Dickinson. In addition to Ollie Uelevi. So you look at these guys, the three big young guys. Uelevi was a 2016 5th overall pick, Quinn Hughes 2018 7th overall pick, and Elias Pettersson 2017 5th overall pick. That's too much value. That's 3 top 10 picks right there that right now they might not play for your team next season. And I think after the signings of like Seth Jones and Cale Makar, Quinn Hughes is looking at a possible $9 million extension, which I think is fair value for him. But the fact of the matter is Vancouver doesn't have it. So that's just $9 million for Quinn Hughes, and that leaves a small amount, not enough for Petey, in my opinion. And then you still have Uelevi, who can't just let go. So they're going to have to make a move, I think.
Yeah, it sure seems to be that way. And Matt, it seems as if you would agree. So let's come over to you, Matt. And do you think that there's any way that Vancouver can shed that cap in order to bring these guys back, say via trade? Do you have any ideas of how this could happen?
Well, I have one guy in mind, and he's a guy who's been on a lot of people's trade watches for the past, pretty much ever since Vancouver acquired him from Winnipeg, in Tyler Myers, a guy who is being paid $6 million, which is a lot of money for a defenseman to begin with, plus he hasn't been giving them much value. 21 points in 56 games last year isn't what you want from a top defenseman, but it's okay. I think he's a guy who could fetch some value in some teams who are looking to upgrade defensively, who doesn't have much defensive depth. And one team I have in particular is Ottawa, a team who surprised a lot of people last season in the fact that they weren't just god-awful, they were just okay to bad. And I think a way they could really up themselves with their forward depth being as good as it is now, and with all the young guys on the forward side, they need more people on defense. And I look at a guy like Tyler Myers fitting in there. I do have $2 million retained by Vancouver, so it's about $4 million of his $6 million value going over to Ottawa. $2 million retained for a 4th round pick the other way from Ottawa. I think for Vancouver, you get $4 million off the books that you could use easily, and then you add that on to the $14 million they have now. That should be plenty to be able to sign the guys that you need to sign. And for Ottawa, like I said, you bring in that depth on the defense that you don't really have. So that's my trade.
I think it makes a lot of sense because I think it's safe to say that Petey and Hughes are the priorities in this situation, and you have to do whatever it takes to bring them back because you're not going to find guys like that as easily as drafting them like you did. You're not going to have that draft success over and over and over again, and hopefully not have those low picks over and over and over again if you're successful. So Jake, with that being said, what do you think Vancouver needs to do to acquire the cap space to get those guys re-signed?
Well, first let me reflect on Matt's trade. He had me until he said that he wanted to retain $2 million, which I think for this trade to be a success, you can't retain anything. You just got to get that $6 million off the books, and they need all of that $6 million to come off the books. So looking at your trade, Matt, do you think that they could maybe get the full $6 million going without anything retained if they threw in somebody like Jason Dickinson and said, hey, Ottawa, his arbitration, that's your problem?
Yeah, I think that's definitely possible. The only reason I had them retaining salary cap in the first place is because I was looking at Ottawa's roster, and where he would fit on the team is probably their second or third defenseman on that team with who's set up there. And they had obviously Thomas Chabot, and then they have Zaitsev underneath him, so I think Myers would fit in that third spot, and both those guys are making over $4 million. So I was thinking if they're going to bring in a third guy, maybe bringing in a guy that is not going to get paid more than their top two guys would make sense for Ottawa. But yeah, I agree with you in that aspect that if you do throw in, say, a draft pick, or you do throw in like a Jason Dickinson, I think that could definitely sway Ottawa. It's really just up to what Ottawa wants and what Vancouver's willing to budge on. And I think that's what we'll figure out here.
Yeah, I think that's some great adjustments or like contemplations there. But going into my trade, I also have Tyler Myers going because, again, I think getting rid of his $6 million would be huge, and that's money that they need. So look at another trade that just happened recently. The Vegas Golden Knights shed $7 million in cap by just saying, hey, Chicago, look at this great goalie we have here, Marc-Andre Fleury. We don't want anything. Nothing. Just take this contract and he is all yours. And they send him off to Chicago, put a nice bow on him, and it's like Christmas came early for both sides. So I think that if Vancouver tried the same thing with Tyler Myers and said, hey, just take him, we don't want anything, just future considerations. But I don't think they do that with Ottawa. I think they do it with Detroit. Because if you look at Detroit's lines right now, they have a very, very solid forward core. They're young, and there's some skill there. But defensively, the pairings are DeKaiser, Hronek, I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but Moritz Seider, Nick Leddy, Mark Stahl, and Troy Stetcher. I think if you throw Tyler Myers in that group of six, Mark Stahl sort of becomes that extra guy. So if you have an injury, Mark Stahl can step back in. But Myers is the more solid player that would round out that defense. So I think they might be able to pull hey, Detroit, you've got like $25 million cap. Take this 6, and you get a solid defender out of it.
Yeah, I think both you guys are onto a good point there. Because think about it, you would be getting rid of Myers to make sure that you have Hughes, and I think it's pretty obvious that Hughes is the guy, as well as having Ekman Larsson on their defensive line now. So I really like those trade ideas. I think that for both sides it would be a win, no matter if he goes to Ottawa or Detroit. Curious to know what you guys think. So if you guys are still watching, let us know in the comments. Who do you think, or how do you think Vancouver is going to be able to shed that cap, if at all? But either way, I think it's obvious you got to bring back those 2 stars. I've been saying that, and I'm going to say it again. That has got to be the priority for betting right now. So that being said, if this trade happens and you make that cap space more flexible, Jake, how much do you think that Petey and Hughes would be getting? Do you think they're going to get paid a significant amount right out the gate, maybe a bridge deal? What are your thoughts?
I think they've proven too much already for it to be a bridge deal. If I'm either of those players, I say, what do I have to prove on a 2 or 3 year deal? Like, I've shown you that I am an NHL caliber player. I want max term, and I want to get paid, really. So I think Vancouver tries to lock them up for that 8-year contract. And if they could pull off a matching $9 million deal, I think that would be really good. They're still young players, so you're locking up young guys until they're about 30. $9 million in 5 years from now, when they're leading the league and everything, that's going to be a perfect deal. So I think you give them max term at around that value. And then with Levy, I think that could be your bridge deal, where if you make that Tyler Myers trade, you end up with roughly 20 mil. So you've got your 2 studs signed for 18 mil total, and then you've got 2 mil that hopefully you can work with Levy and say, hey, here's your bridge deal, show us what you've got.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Matt, would you make any adjustments to those contracts?
Nah, I think I pretty much agree with what he had to say there. I mean, Elias Pettersson, when he's healthy, is one of the best forwards, best centers in the entire NHL, and he's a guy who deserves to get paid like that. And like he said, doesn't need to prove anything else. And the same thing goes with Quinn Hughes. And I think with Quinn Hughes' sake, this is a guy who you have to compare to some of the other contracts that we've been getting around the league, with Kyle McCarr getting paid $9 million, with Chicago bringing in Seth Jones and paying him $9.5 million. I think you look at Quinn Hughes and be like, well, he thinks to himself, I'm in that category of defenseman. I'm one of the best defensemen in the league. I want to get paid like it. And he should. I mean, he's definitely proved it. He's one of those type guys. And I think he's not going to budge until that situation happens. I think the same thing happens with Elias Pettersson. So these dudes deserve to get paid. I think a lot of people say at this point, why Vancouver have you not paid him yet with how good these two guys have been? And I think eventually it'll get done.
I mentioned that Seth Jones sort of affected the market with the contract that he signed, but we look at Quinn Hughes, who was a Calder finalist. I believe he got beat out by Cale Makar, and then Petey was a Calder Trophy winner. Look at the most recent Calder Trophy winner. It was Kirill the Thrill Kaprizov, and he's saying, hey, Minnesota, give me what I want or I'm not re-signing. Like the KHL is calling my name. So he's also affecting the market by not signing a contract. So I think Vancouver looks at that and says, there's nothing saying these young guys have to sign. Let's give them what they want.
Yeah, and again, you're not going to find these elite players just everywhere. I mean, they're a dime a dozen. That's why they're considered the elite. That's why they get paid the way that they do, because they deserve it. Not everyone gets paid $9 million a year, but these guys definitely deserve it. And if you're a Vancouver fan, I'm sure you guys are sitting there like, give them 10, give them 11. Who cares? Get them back here. Trade who you need to. Get these guys back here. We enjoy watching them. Everybody enjoys watching them. They're amazing to watch. So with that said, guys, next year, Vancouver, regardless of what happens, who do you think is going to be their best player, and where do you think they're going to finish in the standings? Do you think they're going to be a playoff team once again? Are they going to come up short? Jake, let's come to you. Let's do the best player.
All right, the best player, in my opinion, is going to be Connor Garland. I think he's going to take that top line role from Brock Besser because I just think Connor Garland's that good. He's got an elite, well, we can hope that he gets an elite center if they can figure out how to bring Petey back. But if you have Petey centering Connor Garland, they're going to tear it up, especially in that Pacific Division. They'll play. We're actually going to get to see him play against other teams this season, which is going to be more fun than last season. But for the most part, they'll still play the majority against their division, and that's not a very strong division. So I think Garland is going to hit career highs, and it's just going to be a perfect combo.
All right, Matt, who do you think? Do you agree with Jake? You think it's going to be Connor Garland or a guy like Ekman Larson, Quinn Hughes, Petey? Who do you think?
Well, before the people back in Vancouver start flipping cars over off of what Jake just said, I will have to say I agree with him in the aspect that I think Connor Garland is going to have a great year with them. I think they got him on a steal of a contract, and he's going to be good, but he's not taking Brock Besser's first-line slot. That's not happening. Brock Besser has been an amazing player, and I have him as their best player for next season. He's a dude coming off a 23-goal season, and in a down year like that, a guy who could still give you 20-plus goals on that top line is still showing you his value in his work, and he's only 24 years old. And another big thing is he's coming into his contract year. So he's a guy who's looking to get paid after this season, so he's going to be playing balls to the walls pretty much, as he's going to be trying to score as many goals as possible. He's going to get as many points as possible, and him and Petey work well together. If you can get Petey signed, those two can make magic next season. I think that's going to really shine and show that Brock Besser, the American himself, is going to have a monster season to be their best player. And also, I have them finishing third in the division. And I think that's just because, for one, like Jake said, this division really isn't that great. And you're going up against like a 50-year-old Edmonton team, and really the only team that they have to compete with is Vegas in the Battle of the V's. So I think in that aspect, they really don't have that much to deal with. Obviously, the Calgary rivalry is still going to be there, and Seattle looks like they're brewing a new rivalry here. Seattle's going to be another tough team to watch. You're going to see that. But I think all in all, I'm I'm excited for this Vancouver team, and I'm excited to see them take that jump forward and really rebound from what was a tough season last year and fight for that playoff spot.
Yeah, I think your guys' picks are absolutely stellar. I think it's no mystery that those guys are going to be ones to watch. But I think personally that Petey will be the guy. If he comes out, if he gets paid, which he should, comes back healthy, he's going to put up the numbers that we're used to seeing him put up. He's going to put on a show like we're used to seeing him do. So that's my personal pick. Jake, let's come back to you. That way you can tell us where you think Vancouver's finishing next season.
All right, so we actually just made a video on the LA Kings, and I think that they made some great additions. So I still think in the last video I had them up pretty high. But as of now, I have the LA Kings in second place in the division. And the Vancouver Canucks are right behind them. I think the Canucks are going to finish third. I believe Matt said the same. So I think that with the youth still developing, they made some great additions on all ends, offense, defense, goaltender. I think that Vancouver is going to mean business this season.
So where do you have Vegas and Edmonton then if you have LA and Vancouver at second and third?
Well, Dom, I guess you'll have to check in when we upload those videos and find out, huh?
All right, that's fair. Hey, I think that's a really good place to put Vancouver. I also had them at third, so we're all in agreement here. It looks like so. All right, hey, are there any other thoughts, concerns, or anything that we need to discuss before we wrap up this video?
I will say for Travis Green, their head coach, one thing I'd like to say is this is a big year for him. He's been there in Vancouver for 4 years now, it seems like. He's going on to his 5th season, so this is a big year, and this is a guy who, after coming off a bad season like that, they're going to have to see whether he's the guy or not, or if he can bring this young roster to fruition, because he really needs to.
Yeah,
I would agree with that. You got to keep in mind they made the playoffs a couple years ago in the bubble, and then last season with a shaky roster, they didn't have a good season. They put the pieces in place for him. If he can't get them into the playoffs for whatever reason, then if I'm the GM, I say, hey, don't let the door hit you on the way out, because this team needs to start showing signs of success.
Yeah, they have that young talent. I mean, between Besser, Petey, Quinn Hughes, I mean, that roster should be a playoff team, in my opinion. So I think you guys are onto something there. All right, well, hey, that's it. Let's wrap up this video. Vancouver fans, you have a lot to look forward to, and I hope we see Petey and Hughes getting paid within the next hour because they need to be back in Vancouver for you guys. So, hey, let us know what you think of our thoughts in the comments below. Leave a thumbs up if you liked the video. And again, please consider hitting that subscribe button, guys. We're still growing. We'll see you next time on Winnemac Hockey.